Grab a cup of tea or listen as you go, ladies. This is your hour with Dr. Zoe, your life and relationship coach, with encouragement, on-point insight, inspiring guests, health tips, and advice. Dr. Zoe helps busy women keep their mind in the game by redefining your superwoman. You're listening to The Dr. Zoe Show.
Hi there, it's Dr. Zoe. It is a somewhat drizzly Southern California day today, so welcome to my show. I believe that every woman has a superpower, and my job, my passion is to help you find it, embrace it, and share it with the world. If you want some encouragement, connect with me by texting the word JOIN to 38470. That's the word JOIN to 38470. You'll get on my newsletter where I send out a lot of encouragement to all you superwomen out there holding it down, and I know that you are. Today, I'm so excited because this topic, I've had 5 children, and so the topic of having babies and that experience throughout pregnancy and afterwards is, of course, very dear to my heart. And my guest today is Heather Turner. She's a DONA International Certified Doula and a Certified Lamaze Childbirth Educator. And of course, she's a mother of 2 boys. So she's got life experience there. You can find her at navydoula.com, and she's the owner of Your Birth, which I think is the best name ever because, of course, when it comes to childbirth, it is so important to recognize that this is your experience. It's your birth. We're going to be talking about everything from bump to blues. And before we get started, we always do a Superwoman win and a Superwoman bomb. So I've got a great win for me this week. I was a keynote speaker at Port Hueneme Naval Base, and it was such an honor to be invited to speak regarding Women's History Month and on International Women's Day, which was so cool. And the whole experience was wonderful. And for me, it was a really big Superwoman win because I had a great experience. The speech I gave was so well received. And so for me, it was just awesome. So that's my win. And of course, you do something that just feels like, yes, I hit it out of the park. And then on Sunday, I forgot my 5-year-old daughter. She had a tea party she was invited to, and she was so excited. And she'd been counting down the days. And my day got all crazy on Sunday. My son auditioned for a singing competition, and we were doing all these things. I totally forgot about the birthday party. I didn't realize it until Monday morning. And I think I might have been a little more devastated because I felt so bad because she's 5 and it was her first little girl birthday party that she was invited to. And so I really felt like a fail as a mama that I forgot it. And I was nervous coming to my daughter. I'm preparing my speech as I go to her and I told her, okay, something really, really bad happened. And mom forgot the tea party, and the look on her face, she was so upset. But I have to say, she took it really well. I was waiting for tears. I was waiting for all kinds of things. But of course, I promised we're going to now have to create a new tea party. We're going to have her friend over and have our own tea party. But anyway, my mom fail. It happens, ladies. And that's why I share my mom fails as well as the wins, because we all do it. We, hit it out of the park some days, and some days we just fall flat on our face. So it's part of the beautiful chaos of living life as a woman, as a superwoman. So welcome, Heather.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited to have this conversation to help support our women out there who are going through this phase, which is, for many women, part of womanhood. So before we get started, can you tell us your Superwoman win and your Superwoman fail?
So my Superwoman win was back in October of 2017.
Mm-hmm.
I, along with about 100 other childbirth educators with Lamaze International, were invited to Washington, D.C. and participate in an advocacy program where we were able to go and meet with our different state representatives and advocate for women with childbirth and childbirth education. And it was an honor to go and be able to meet with my local representative, which was Steve Knight. We actually met with one of his staff members and were able to share some of the issues that we're facing in the Antelope Valley but all the other delegates that were there as well got to meet with their local representatives. And that Lamaze International put that together for us and allowed us to represent them was just an honor and a win for women everywhere.
Yes, that's a huge win. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Awesome. So for the bomb.
My bomb is I struggle every night to make supper for my family. Like I'm so busy throughout the day. I struggle with my time management on a daily basis. And if I can get supper together, now our boys are 19 and 21. So it's not like we have little ones running around, but when I make dinner, I'm like, yes, but so rarely am I able to make dinner now. So that's it's on a daily basis.
Okay. I have to admit, I'm so happy to hear that because I do the same thing. And on one level, I think, okay, it's so simple. Just put the food out in the morning or start thinking about it. But it just inevitably what happens is that you get to the end of the day and you're like, oh no, what's for dinner?
Yeah. And my husband helps a lot and our boys will cook whatever I ask him. It's just like the pre-planning that I have to make. Yeah. A crock pot would be fantastic.
Yes.
I do have a crock pot. I use it like fairly irregularly. I don't know. It's the planning. So.
Yes, it's the planning.
So yeah, that was my fail last night. We had pizza and it was at 10 o'clock at night.
Hey, and you know what? The awesome thing is you have older kids and clearly they're older because they managed to survive their whole childhood. So you're doing something.
I've kept everybody alive.
You've kept them all alive. Thank you for sharing that.
Yes.
So today's topic, from bump to blues. And so as I mentioned before, I have been through this 5 times. My first birth was actually when I was a teenager. I was a teen mom and I placed my daughter for adoption, which is a long story, but that birth was medicated. But I didn't have an epidural. And then my last 4 were all unmedicated hospital births. And one of them with my daughter Sully was horribly traumatic, not just the birth, but all the after parts of it, and affected my 5th child in that whole experience. So, and with all of my pregnancies and postpartum experiences, I felt all of those wonderful hormonal swings. And I truly believe that saying that with each child born, a mother is born, because no matter how many times you go through the experience, every single one is different. And so whether this is your first birth that you're getting ready to experience or you just experienced, or whether this is your 8th birth, I'm just excited to have you guys here listening to this. So can you explain what you are? So you're a doula. For a couple people who don't remember, or who don't know what that is, can you explain what that is?
So there's several different types of doulas. So I'm a birth doula, which means that I offer support to expecting families throughout the pregnancy and then the actual labor and then some postpartum care. There are also birth doulas that use that as a profession and they come in, they're usually hired right before the birth and then they support the family for the first, sometimes 2 to 3 months. It depends.
Wow.
It depends on how much support the family needs and what that particular postpartum doula specializes in, but they're not necessarily a nanny.
Right.
And then we have bereavement doulas and a few other types of doulas. We have death doulas.
Wow.
So it's expanding. So for me as a birth doula, sometimes I get hired very early on in the pregnancy if the family knows for sure that they want to have a doula and they want to make sure that that particular doula is available. And other times I've been hired, 2 weeks before the estimated due date.
Wow.
So the support that we offer the family, the laboring person, is, very broad, from different stretches that they can do to help with the pregnancy and the discomforts that come along with pregnancy, all the way through to helping them come up with a birth plan.
So let's talk about that for a second, because I know that's one big question that a lot of people have is, should you have a birth plan? Some people say yes, some people say no.
So there's a growing trend to call it a birth preference now, as opposed to a birth plan, because it's meant to be fluid.
Okay.
And it's very important that when you come up with that preference or plan, that you understand that this is okay. In an ideal situation, this is what I would like to happen. And it's really important to share that preference with your care provider, whether it be an OB doctor or midwife, so that they can, have an idea of what you'd preferably like to happen. So I think that it's important to have that. It's also really, really important for it to not be more than 1 page and ideally bullet points. like the staff doesn't necessarily need to know that you want the lights dim and music playing and you're going to be using your birth ball and all this other stuff in aromatherapy. They need to know the things that pertain to them.
Good point.
So by keeping it one page, ideally with bullet points, it's going to be something that they can easily reference. And then also there's a new style where it's just icons. I don't know if you've seen that.
Really? No.
Almost like apps.
Really?
Just
Like
icons.
emojis or something?
Yeah, that's probably a better word to use. So it's just like down and dirty, just I want this, delayed cord clamping, and you know what I mean? And just pictures. So it's really easy once again for the staff to pick it up and look at it. I also recommend having several copies, like one over by, especially for a hospital birth, having one close to the laboring person and then having one close to where the baby's going to be taken for any kind of observations or whatever, like over by the baby warmer.
Oh, that's a great idea.
And you can ask everybody that comes into the room, from the person that's, just checking your bedding or whatever, your vitals, whatever, just make sure, hey, do you mind taking a peek at our birth plan? This is what we'd really like. We'd just like everybody that comes in to know that this is what we're ideally liking to have happen.
That's great. Now, the question that comes up for me, and I have a friend who's going through this right now, is do you have a lot of people who have issues with their doctors not supporting their birth plan? What should you do?
So that's a really, really tricky question.
Yeah.
So it would be really great if you could interview different OB doctors, but I realize that many people don't have that option.
Right.
And
she's like with Kaiser or whatever, and she just has a specific doctor. And
so much of it depends on your insurance. So truth be told, at a typical hospital birth, it's very much the nurses that manage the care, and your doctor really just comes in to catch the baby. So if they can be on board, or if their doctor can be on board with some of their ideas, maybe remind them at the moment of birth that this is what, like if for delayed cord clamping or placenta encapsulation or some other there's some really big issues that we could tackle that would take a whole nother show. If she is trying to have a TOLAC, which is a trial labor after a cesarean, and the doctor's not supporting it and they're pushing for a repeat cesarean, but really she's a good candidate for it. I mean, so it can be very difficult.
Yeah.
And ideally they could possibly get another care provider, but that's hard when you're in a big insurance group, and Kaiser's huge. So
yeah, that's a tough one. That's a tough one. It's funny because you said that, the doctor catches the baby. With my last one, Siggy, the doctor had totally missed the whole deal.
Did the nurse catch her? Did you just?
Nobody catched her. She just slid right out on the table because the nurse was like, stop pushing. I'm like, I'm not pushing. There she goes. And then she got the doctor, and he came in and he's like, I missed it. I'm still going to charge you, but.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure the doctor still got paid.
Yes, he did. He did. Okay, this is Dr. Zoe, and we are here with my guest, Heather Turner, and we're talking about everything from bump to blues. We will be back in just a minute.
People ask me, how do you have so much energy? I am not a coffee drinker, but I love the benefits of matcha green tea. More antioxidants than coffee and a smooth energy, not the jittery kind that lasts me all day long. Perfect for you supermoms too. I have searched the world over for that perfect matcha for my smoothies, and I have found it at Kiss Me Organics. You can get it too at kissmeorganics.com. Enter the promo code Dr. Zoe, DRZOE, for 10% off and free shipping. Experience the smooth, healthy, organic energy of matcha green tea. KissMeOrganics.com.
Hi guys, it's Dr. Zoe, and we are back with my guest, Heather Turner. We are talking about everything from bump to blues. And you can contact Heather at navydoula.com. and also at AVDoula on Instagram. Is that correct, Heather?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, thank you. I was getting totally confused. I'm looking at a million things. And Heather, you are a certified birth doula, and so obviously you work locally, but you also have childbirth classes as well, and
I do.
Resources on your website for women all over the world, I would assume?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so my question, and I'm once again thinking about my listeners, is for a woman who's preparing, what is the best way to be prepared for, and I know that's such a general question, but what's the best way to get prepared?
To get pregnant or to have a baby?
To have a baby.
So I think for sure, the number one thing that they can do is hire a care provider that they feel comfortable with, whether it be a doctor, midwife, or a certified midwife or licensed midwife, and then also to attend a childbirth class. We know for sure that pregnant people who attend a childbirth class, ideally an in-person class, benefit so much more than just from the information that they get. But they also, create a bond between the other people that are in the class as well, because generally most of you are due around the same time.
Yes.
And it's all about building that village. And when we see that they make a connection, maybe a couple of, they find out they live in the same condo complex or whatever, then you know that they're going to be able to support each other, not only during the pregnancy, but probably after, when then we're looking at, becoming parents. And that's a whole other, road that they're going to travel down.
I love that you said that, because I think I am probably the best example of that. I can so attest to it, because my best friend, Rosie, she and I met in our Bradley class 17 years ago. And we were pregnant. We had our babies like a week apart, and we just totally bonded by, in that experience and everything. We were just calling each other every day, like, is your baby doing this? Is mine? And then we got pregnant again together. And so we had our second again together. And I'm the godmother. She's godmother to our children. But literally we've done life together. And that's from having met, being pregnant at the same time, in our life. So yeah, it definitely, everyone's not going to have that experience, but I did. And yet that's a really great point. Okay. So what I love is that you described yourself as not a crunchy doula. And I love that, because I know many people think, okay, well, a doula, that means you're going to have your baby at home in a, hot tub, and you're totally going to have no medication, but that's not true, right?
It's not. And I mean, absolutely no disrespect to all the crunchy doulas that are out there, but I just am a very mainstream type of person. And I, even though we did homeschool our boys, we did do vaccinations, but we did an altered schedule for that. And, but when I look at childbirth and I look at the families that I support, and not only through my doula business, but also through my Lamaze classes, I do talk about epidurals. I do talk about cesareans. I do try to make sure that they have a very well-rounded point of view, and that they know what their options are. There's many doulas that offer essential oil support throughout labor, which can be wonderful. I've been to many home births, birth center births, not so much locally, but we do have a new birth center locally, which is fantastic.
That's awesome. I didn't know that.
Yes. And we're so blessed to have the Antelope Valley Birth Center in our community. So yeah, I'm a very mainstream type of doula.
And that's good. And so what that means for you women out there is that you don't have to have a home birth in order to have a doula. You can utilize a doula in your hospital birth or your birth center birth, whatever type of birth that you want to have. And the doula is really there just to support, to be a voice for you, as well as being supportive during the process of your labor. And so what happens? And I know that this is, it's certainly something that happened for me with my birth and afterwards with my baby in the hospital. What happens when it goes wrong? Or I had to say that word wrong, when it doesn't go as planned.
So during the delivery?
Yeah.
So hopefully there's lots of communication happening between the staff and the laboring person, that they at least have an idea, or at least their support person has a good idea. The laboring person is probably not going to be very aware of things that are happening necessarily. So when things don't go well, but everybody's okay, then, that's just something to be able to reflect back on after. And maybe with your second birth, you would maybe choose some things differently, maybe choose a different place of birth, or, maybe make sure that you have a different care provider. When things go different and it's scary, then, oh, for goodness sakes, like, thank goodness you are where you're at and you chose the team that you have there, and that they're going to do everything they can to make sure that both, the laboring person and the baby are okay. But no birth plan in the world can prevent those things.
Right.
So education, childbirth education, we talk about some of the scary stuff that can happen.
That's what I was going to say. Is there anything that women can do to prepare themselves for that?
So, having a well-rounded class. I mean, natural childbirth classes are great, but I think it's also important, like in our particular area, we have a really high epidural rate. So we need to talk about epidurals, and many laboring people choose epidural. So when's a good time to get an epidural? And then we also have a fairly high cesarean rate. So making sure that they understand what can increase their chances or decrease their chances of having a cesarean, and then how to communicate with their care provider that they have choices when they have a cesarean. If it's not a true like life and death emergency, it's more of a failure to progress or baby is malpositioned and just no way baby's going to change, that they can request certain things that can make that experience more enjoyable for the laboring person as well.
Okay. I like that. And I know a lot of, when you're pregnant, obviously you just want to focus on the positive thoughts, and that's so important, and you should. But I also think it's important that you're aware that things can go differently from your plan. And it doesn't mean that all is wrong or all is bad. It just means that, okay, you've taken a little different path, and if it gets you to your healthy baby, that's all that matters.
Absolutely. And you can have every intervention in the world and still have a fantastic outlook on the birth. And it's all about that communication and keeping the laboring person involved in the decision making, and their partner just makes all the difference. It's all about how you're treated. And you'll remember for the rest of your life how you're treated.
Yes.
During these very raw experiences that we have.
Well, also because all of your senses are so heightened that it does make that experience so much more memorable. The cool thing is you got some cool chemicals that help you forget about all the pain, which is why you go back and do it again.
Multiple times.
Right. Okay, so I want to transition a little bit into talking about postpartum depression. There are some things that you can do to avoid postpartum depression, but the reality is that it is a chemically based disorder. It's certainly something that is genetically predispositioned as well. And 90% of women experience the baby blues. That's totally normal. I can remember after having my son, just looking down at him and just crying and just feeling, all these overwhelming hormonal and emotional feelings about, am I going to be a good mom? I have this baby now. Am I going to be able to give him everything I need to give him? And there's also something called antenatal depression. And that is when you have some depression during your pregnancy, which is also, I won't say common, but it's definitely a possible thing that you might deal with. And it's one of those same emotional / chemical issues that can be going on. So 90% of women have the baby blues. About 10 to 20% of them go from a baby blues to an all-out depression. And that depression can actually occur anytime during the 12-month period after you have a baby. So if your doctor is saying, oh, it's been 6 months, you're not having postpartum depression. Actually, that's not true. And so there are some steps that you can do to set yourself up as best as you can. But the reality is, if you do have a postpartum depression, all is not lost. Plenty of women get through this and go on to have healthy, happy lives, healthy, happy babies, healthy, happy connections with their children. And so just, I think the fear of it sometimes is really great, especially if you've been through it before. And the reality is, if you've been through it before, you do have a higher chance of going through it again, but also you're coming from a place of knowledge. And so you can do a couple of things to prevent. So some of the things you can put into place is asking for help. And making sure that I'm going to need help. Don't be that mom who feels like I shouldn't ask for help. And I was that mom. And I remember after my daughter, my fourth, and we had so many complications with that birth and really a lot of trauma, I had what I would now diagnose as postpartum depression. But as a therapist, the last thing I was going to do was tell somebody about it. And I had some very, very dark thoughts, and I didn't want to share them with anybody. And I know that I walked through that time period. I remember I lost my hair, not all of it, but I started, my hair started really thinning. I was under a lot of stress. And if I had really had somebody professional to talk about all of those issues with, it would have helped me tremendously. And so what I'm saying is ask for help. And there are postpartum doulas that Heather just talked about.
There's many across the country, postpartum doulas that can help with some mild, the baby blues, but can also help you identify like maybe when you need more help along with your partner, if you have a full-time partner with you, but they can help ease that transition into parenthood and offer support, not just to obviously the baby, but to you. It can make a huge difference.
Exactly. Because when you are feeling the baby blues or when you're feeling depressed, I mean, one of the big things is lack of motivation. And now you've got this whole baby you need to take care of, and you're likely sleep deprived. And getting someone like a doula or someone to come in and to help you can help you get some of that sleep that you really do need to recover and rejuvenate. It can help you with all the little things that might be making you feel very overwhelmed and a little bit sad. And like I said before, talk about it. The other one is moving your body. And sometimes, especially if you've had a C-section or, you've had a really difficult labor, you can tend to not want to move that body, right? Moving your body can really help you feel better.
It can. And to include in that is getting out, getting fresh air.
Mm-hmm.
As great as social media is, there's something about getting up, getting dressed, and actually leaving the house and actually meeting with people in person, which can be very, very helpful for many.
Absolutely. And there is no right way that you are supposed to be feeling or being as a mother. And so what we do know about depression, all types, is that our thoughts drive and make our depression worse if our thoughts are negative. And so what you have to do is really work hard. And especially with social media, it's so hard when you can go on Instagram and see, the happy mommy with her baby, but you've got to stop comparing. We've got to change that pressure that we put on ourselves as mothers. And I know it's pressure because we want to do right by our babies. We have this tremendous desire to be the best mother ever. But what you have to remember is that your baby needs a good enough mama, not a perfect mama, because no perfect mamas exist. And your baby is your baby because your baby is supposed to be parented by you. And so if you can really work on, even before you have your baby, harnessing in any of those negative thoughts and fears and speaking positively to yourself about who you are as a person, who you are as a mama, and making sure that you are not comparing yourself and not entertaining all those other people that are telling you what to do. And so one last little tip is not to stop breastfeeding cold turkey if you can help it. I had this experience with my one of them, when I was working, and I did stop kind of cold turkey. And I felt that hormonal crash. I hadn't even thought about it, but it is a big hormonal crash when you stop cold turkey. And so if you can stop gradually, if you're breastfeeding, and also breastfeeding helps because it helps from the crash of pregnancy, that helps that crash or help it not happen. Sorry. Mm-hmm. So those two things, breastfeed if you can. And then when you do stop slowly. And that can help keep your hormones a little more level. So this is Dr. Zoe. I'm going to be back in just a minute with my guest, Heather, and we are going to answer some questions from you listeners about pregnancy, beyond. We'll be back in just a minute.
People ask me, how do you have so much energy? I am not a coffee drinker, but I love the benefits of matcha green tea. More antioxidants than coffee and a smooth energy, not the jittery kind that lasts me all day long. Perfect for you supermoms too. I have searched the world over for that perfect matcha for my smoothies, and I have found it at Kiss Me Organics. You can get it too at kissmeorganics.com. Enter the promo code Dr. Zoe, DRZOE, for 10% off and free shipping. Experience the smooth, healthy, organic energy of matcha green tea. KissMeOrganics.com.
Hi guys, it's Dr. Zoe, and I am back with my guest, Heather Turner, certified doula. And I was just addressing some issues regarding postpartum depression, and Heather brought up a really great point about breastfeeding. Can you talk about that?
So feeding the baby is what's important.
Mm-hmm.
And we do know that some women can't breastfeed or choose not to breastfeed, or things just aren't going well. And so working with a professional, a lactation consultant, can really help you navigate through that.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe the baby needs to be supplemented, or maybe breastfeeding is just not what's going to work at this time. When that decision is made, it's just important to get the baby fed, and to not have any added guilt about your breastfeeding journey that didn't go well. I just wanted to point that out.
No, I think that's an excellent point. And as I think back on my babies and my fourth child, Sully, I put so much pressure on myself to breastfeed her. And she was in the NICU for a couple of weeks and she couldn't suck. She had so many issues, and I hired a lactation consultant, and I was determined that I was going to do this. And ultimately, I was not able to breastfeed her. And I remember feeling a lot of that guilt and all the pressure. And then I went on because, I just had to. And I pumped for a year and fed that baby I pumped every 3 hours, and it was way too much. And to be honest with you, I look back and I wished I would have just given her some formula. Because I took that year and put so much pressure on myself as if that was the be all and the end all. And the reality is it wasn't. And if I had been able to give myself a little more permission to formula feed her, she couldn't nurse, it's okay, I would have had a much better experience with her.
Absolutely.
As an infant.
But that takes a lot of encouragement.
It does.
And not that you didn't have the encouragement, but we put so much pressure on ourselves, like you said, to be perfect. And I mean, obviously we know that breastfeeding is best.
Yes.
But there are many, many times when it's just not what's best for the baby. And
that's true.
And for the
family.
The family.
Yes.
So
best for the baby and best for the family. And ultimately what's best for the family will also be best for the baby. Yes. So lots of things to talk about. And women, as you are going through this, just seek out support, because I think that really is one of the most important things. Is I think we can overeducate ourselves with the internet these days. And I think it's more about seeking out support. And that's why I love the title of your business, Your Birth, because it really is about making it what you want it to be, not what anybody else says it should be. Okay, so here are some questions from some listeners. This is Real Talk. If you're just tuning in, it's Dr. Zoe. And this part of the show, I answer questions from my listeners and share my own musings and encouragement sometimes. Please reach out if you have questions that you'd like me to address on the show. All questions are anonymous. I take your confidentiality seriously as if you were my own client. You can email questions to Zoe at drzoeshaw.com or connect with me on any of my social medias. So question number 1. I don't feel bonded or attached to my baby. Am I a horrible mom? I hope you know that my answer is no. You are not a horrible mom. Just like I said before, a baby needs a good enough mother, not a perfect mother. And I've talked about this a lot, about what that means, good enough. But there is no perfect mother. And the reality is that even if bonding doesn't happen immediately, it will happen over time. Sometimes things like postpartum depression can interfere with your ability to bond with your baby. If you get treated, you seek out help, you talk to somebody, that will get resolved. And not bonding with your baby immediately does not make you a bad mom any more than a mother who bonds with her baby immediately makes her a good mom. Sometimes, like I said, you've got to give yourself grace. Take breaks from your baby. Sometimes when you haven't been able to bond with your baby, you feel like, well, I need to spend more time with my baby. Sometimes it's the opposite. Taking breaks from your baby can give you some time to focus on yourself. And it can also give you some time away from your baby so that when you come back, you're happy to see your baby, happy to enjoy spending time with your baby. Another little trick is to watch your baby sleeping. And the reason why is, of course, they're just so darn adorable. But really the reason why is because when your baby's sleeping, your baby's not requiring anything from you. And especially if you're feeling depressed, sometimes that pull, especially if you're a new mom, not having somebody that's pulling something from you constantly, that first experience is really difficult. So if you can sit and watch your baby sleep, not the whole time because you need rest too, but it can help generate some of those positive feelings when your baby's not pulling something from you. And really overall, I'm just encouraging you that it's going to happen. Don't try to rush it. Don't try to push it. You're going to look at that baby one day and that surge of love and connection is going to be there. Just trust that it's going to happen. And there's no timetable for that. The next question is, and I'm going to have Heather help me answer this. There are so many types of births and so many different places to have a baby. How do I decide which one is right for me?
So this can be a tricky question because oftentimes people go by where their insurance allows them to go. But if you have the ability to look beyond that and see what's available, if you have a local birthing center that's freestanding, separate from the hospital, and interview with a midwife and talk about it. Oftentimes they offer interviews at no cost so that you can see if, first of all, you're a right fit for them. And then also visit some of the different hospitals and talk to some other people that have had babies at the different facilities to see, and what kind of birth would you ideally like to have? I mean, are you looking for an epidural birth, but maybe want to get to active labor first, which is always ideal before you get an epidural? Or do you have health restrictions that you don't have an option and you'll be in the hospital? If you have a choice of different hospitals, which one has really great feedback, which one have most
checking reviews.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And then if you are thinking of outside, having a home birth, interviewing midwives that'll support you for that. So it's all about being an educated consumer and looking at reviews and talking to other families and thinking about what you would like to have. And if you're not sure, then, we have certified nurse midwives that support families in hospitals where you can have the care of the midwife. But then if like things are going a little rough and you decide, I do want an epidural, then you can get that epidural, but still have the care of the midwife in the hospital. So,
yeah, you women have so many choices. I mean, before it's just like you go to the hospital, you didn't have to think about that.
Yes.
So by what time during the pregnancy should this choice be made?
Oh, I think pretty early on.
Yeah.
I know that there's some restrictions with insurance companies where they wouldn't let you switch providers. And then when you think about all that prenatal care that you'll be having, I mean, because you're going to have, almost 9 months of prenatal care. So if you can make a connection with that care provider early on, then, or that part of their staff, team members that you work with, if you're with a larger group, the better. But most people, when they take a childbirth class, that's when they really start thinking about, because they'll learn about all these different. It is, which is why I think you could take a class much sooner. Most people take them in their last trimester, but I always welcome people earlier on because there's so much to learn.
Right.
And there's so many decisions that can change as you work through a class.
Yeah. So basically you get pregnant. One of the first things you need to start thinking about is how am I going to get this baby out of my body?
And then you need to start thinking about your pediatricians.
Oh, right.
You know what I mean? Like, because you should, in an ideal situation, people would interview different pediatricians, depending on how you think you're going to raise the child. Are you looking to vaccinate, not vaccinate? Are you going to homeschool or not? And how accessible is this pediatrician? So it all carries on. So by reading these reviews on all these different care providers, it can be really helpful for you to make that decision.
That's a very good point. I remember with my first son, we did that. We were living in Studio City and, during the pregnancy, we interviewed like 10 physicians and we found this amazing one. I remember her name, Sandra Bryan. I just fell in love with her. She was a younger woman pediatrician. And so we chose her and I think she saw Kai once and then she moved.
Oh no.
Yeah. We were like, oh no, we did all this. We prepared to see her for like a year almost. And then that happened. But anyway, yeah, but it is something that you should definitely do because that pediatrician is going to be seeing your baby a lot that first year.
Are they breastfeeding friendly? Which hopefully they all are. But, we hear things all the time on our Facebook group about, oh, my pediatrician said this, that I should do this. And a lot of the feedback that they get is, what? That's crazy. You need to find a different pediatrician.
Right.
Or OB doctor, so.
That is so true because people make the assumption always, well, I won't say always, but people often make the assumption that the physician knows all. And the reality is the physician is a thinking person with his or her own point of view. And you don't know where, the lens through which they see the world. And most of the time it is a very Western pharmaceutical driven type mind. So you really have to do some of your own research. Okay. So next question. I'm terrified of labor. I think it might be a mental illness. I feel like I'm never going to be prepared and I'm scared that I'm going to freak out. What can I do?
So once again, I think attending a childbirth class with any of the support people that are going to be there with you. And if you don't have anybody that's going to be supporting you, then finding a birth doula that you feel comfortable with, that you can afford, that you have a good chemistry with can make all the difference in the world. And they could attend a class with you as well. You will learn so much and learn about what's optional, what probably isn't optional, and you'll get to, air your fears in the open, and you'll quickly realize that pretty much every other person that's in there has that same fear.
Yes.
But also that, you will have options as far as if things are not like you don't feel like you can handle them, like the contractions are just too strong, they're just too close together, that you can get an epidural and that you will then realize that you've worked really hard, you got your epidural, okay, you can relax now. You still have lots of work to do, but the fear of the pain, I think, is what really scares most women, and that they're not going to be able to handle it. They're not going to be able to be in control.
Well, I think that's true. And I remember feeling that way.
Oh, I do too.
Yeah. And I don't know any woman that doesn't fear it, because we all hear those horror stories that people shouldn't be telling us anyway.
We do. We always share the rotten stories,
Right.
like never the good ones.
I know. Yeah. And I think sometimes people look at pregnant women and they're like, oh, let me share my story with you since you're getting ready to go through this. And so I think it's a very natural fear, because we know what birth is supposed to be, and we do know that there's pain involved. And so it's a very natural fear. And I know when I was pregnant, I would just think, I'd look around at all the people that exist in the world, and I'd remind myself, okay, women do this all the time. People have done this with no intervention whatsoever, because there was no choice. If they can get through it, I'm going to be able to get through it too. It's not like, I'm the only person in the world that has to go through this. So sometimes normalizing that and knowing that even, the weakest woman that you can think of can have a baby.
And it's with a purpose.
Yes.
It's not the same as breaking your arm.
Right.
And there's breaks. I mean, it was designed to be so kind,
Mm-hmm.
where, you will not be able to speak very easily during a contraction. And then that contraction is done. And you're like, okay, that one was really rough. I didn't like that one. I need to get up and change position and to get ready for this next one. It's pain with a purpose, which makes it so different. And you can handle it. Your body is designed to handle it.
It is.
But it's hard to hear that when you're like, like that baby's head is going to come down and it's not going to fit, when we know that it will.
It will. Yes. And I love that you say that, pain with a purpose. And that's such a good point, because it's amazing how when that contraction is finished, the pain totally goes away. You feel great in between contractions, and you do get a break. Yeah. And probably a lot of women don't realize that before they go into it. They might think it's just a constant, but it's not. It's not.
And our media is just bombarded with, birth scenes that are totally false.
Yes.
And where, the laboring person is screaming at their partner, I hate you, you did this to me.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, and out of all the births I've been practicing for a really long time, that I've never seen that.
Yes.
I've never seen that. I had one woman who was screaming, but she was at 10 centimeters walking down the hallway. Obviously we didn't realize that, but it's usually so quiet, and, you're just working really hard, but you can do it.
Yes.
You were designed to do that, and you've been preparing for that.
That's so true. And I know I carried this thought with me that I probably learned in my Bradley class, that when you feel like you're at that point where you can't take it any longer, you're like right there. That's usually when the baby is about to come out. You're just almost done. And it really is kind of like that, that wave.
Yeah. Transition by far, that's going from 8 to 10 centimeters, is by far the roughest for many women or laboring people. And that your pain threshold is pretty high. And we know, as educators and doulas, and the nurses all know, that you are really close.
Right.
And we just need to get you over that little hump, and then you're good.
And then you have a beautiful baby.
Then you push, but that's good. But that feels good. So
you do have to push them out, unless, you're having your fifth one and she just slides out. So last question. Oh, I think we're skipping a break. Sorry. Somehow that happened. The last question is, do you recommend breastfeeding for a whole year? I've been doing it for 6 months, and I'm back to work, and it is so very hard.
So once again, when it comes down to it, the most important thing is feeding the baby, making sure the baby is fed. So I think that there's a lot of variations there. Is breastfeeding going well? And now you're finding that you have to pump every 3 hours, and it's just so difficult. I think that that's a great discussion to have, not only with your partner, but maybe with your care provider, and how well is baby doing? Is baby thriving? If you're really struggling to pump all the time, and then everything that goes along with pumping, you may decide that it's best for you and baby to introduce formula. But obviously the goal is to breastfeed for a year. The World Health Organization actually recommends a little longer, but it's, fortunately we have choices, and what's going to work best for you and help you to be healthy and feel good about your baby, and that your baby is being taken care of.
Yes. And I think for everybody, it's a personal experience, and you really do have to look at your entire situation. Just like Heather said, with my second son, Sage, I went back to work. I think I went back to work soonest after he was born, probably like at 8 weeks or something like that. And I was pumping in the bathroom. But you know what? I mean, for me, the work environment I had was really good and it worked for me. And I would take my pump breaks and go do it and come home and feed him and nurse him. But for some women, depending on your environment and especially your emotional state, what you don't want to do is do what I did, like I talked about, is, kill yourself trying to breastfeed as if that's the only thing in the world. And it's not. What's important is your relationship with your baby, is having a healthy baby.
Absolutely.
And a good connection. So thank you, Heather, for coming today. I just wanted to know, are there any last tips that you would want to give mamas about any of the stuff that we've been talking about today?
I once again, I think getting out and actually meeting with people face to face can be really helpful. I think it's really helpful if you're able to get some breastfeeding support before you even have your baby. Many hospitals offer breastfeeding classes, so do birth centers, and lots of lactation consultants offer classes that are just weekly support groups, but you can go in and get some advice and just hear some of the common things that are going on with people that are currently breastfeeding can be really helpful. And also, attending some kind of mommy group. I hate to call it a mommy group, but that's usually
love the mommy groups. Yeah.
I mean, so just, where there's many different styles, cafe style, where you can just kind of come and go. There isn't necessarily a topic. And then there's ones that have topics and it can be great because you can hear, once again, what some of the other common struggles are. So, and then once again, attending a childbirth class, whether it's in a hospital, outside of a hospital. There's so many different ones from Bradley to Lamaze to Birthing from Within and many, many others. I know that we have many educators here in Southern California that all bring different things to the table. And it's so important for you to make those connections and be able to ask those questions. And there's something about, watching a couple of YouTube videos and reading a book. But it's not the same as getting that education.
I think that's a great point. And when I was doing my speech at the Navy base, I was talking about how women are so much more isolated now than we used to be. We used to really be in community with each other. And the reality is our modern world, we're more isolated. And so I really agree with the whole mommy groups or whatever you want to call them. You can find them on
parenting groups,
meetup.com. Then there's always like the Moms Club of wherever in the world you are. You can find that. The cool thing about meetup.com is that you can find mommies who share some of your same kind of ideas. So if you're like a baby carrier, you can find the baby carrier group, or if you're, whatever. There's so many different
I just heard about a new one. I think it's called Peanut. It's like a Tinder for moms to hook up to make friends. It's nothing inappropriate or anything like that. But like you can find another mom that maybe has a child around your same age that maybe is a stay-at-home mom and is available and you can meet in a public place. I just learned about that one just a couple weeks ago from my mom's group that I have, where two of the ladies were meeting for the first time and they're
have like a first date.
Yeah, it's like Tinder, but like for moms.
I love that.
Yeah, I thought that was neat.
Because it really is, as I shared my experience, the biggest blessing to have a mom friend that you kind of do life with. And so you might have to go on a couple dates and it's okay if that first one isn't a good connection. Go on a couple dates, find that good mom friend. And it's certainly beneficial.
Absolutely.
So Heather, before we close today, can you tell my listeners how they can get a hold of you?
So you can find me at Navy Doula, NAVYDOULA.com. And I have links to my class website and also to my advanced doula trainings and where I'm going to be presenting next. Like I'll be at the Lamaze conference next week in San Antonio, Texas.
Awesome.
As an attendee and also as an exhibitor for my Etsy shop. Yeah. So NavyDoula.com is the best way. All my websites revert back to that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Heather.
Thank you for having me.
Sure thing. So if you're just tuning in, it's the Dr. Zoe Show. Tune in next week and every week on Tuesdays from 12 to 1 Pacific, 3 to 4 Eastern at LA Radio Now. For those who can't always listen live, check out reruns of my show on iTunes, Google Play, Libsyn, and YouTube, where I am your life and relationship coach. I help sometimes struggling superwomen keep your mind in the game by by redefining your superwoman. If you know a friend who might benefit from any of our topics, please spread the love and share my show. If you like my show, please show me some stars. Connect with me at drzoeshaw.com or any of my social medias at the handle Dr. Zoe Shaw. And I look forward to speaking with you wonderful ladies on social media after the show. Have a super week.
You've been listening to The Dr. Zoe Show, redefining your superwoman, with your host, Dr. Zoe Shaw. Don't forget to sign up for her monthly newsletters to get encouragement, tips, and skills for keeping your mind in the superwoman game. Connect with her now at www.drzoeshaw.com. Tell your friends and subscribe to her podcast on iTunes. Join us next time for another edition of The Dr. Zoe Show.